Good morning and hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar with the Spain-US Chamber of Commerce and the Small Business Administration. Before we begin and I introduce you our speaker today, I just would like to remind everyone that from the Spain-US Chamber of Commerce, we host a number of activities and events during the year. Almost all of them are open to the public. We try to bring to the community information that could be useful for them, for their businesses, and for all the people. And we try to address different topics. You can follow us and check all our activities in our website, which is www.spainuschamber.com. And you will be able to find there all the webinars that we will host in the future and other activities. And as well, we have a YouTube channel where we used to upload all the webinars that we hosted in the past years. So if there is any topic that you might be interested in watching, you might be able to see it in our YouTube channel. So check that out and don't miss any activity that we host. And today, as a reminder, we will record this webinar and we will also share with all the attendees the video and also the presentation and the contact information from our speaker today, so that if you have any additional question, you might address him directly. And we will upload as well the video to our YouTube channel, and so that way you could share the video with your colleagues and friends that might be interested in getting all the information about the support of the Small Business Administration programs. That there are a lot of interesting things to take into account that might help your business or your colleague businesses. And finally, we will have some minutes at the end of the presentation for questions and answers. So you might be able to send all your questions to us and we will address them after the presentation. In order to send those questions, you just need to click in the questions tab that you will find in the control panel that probably will be on the right side of your screen. There's a tab that says questions. You just need to click there and write your question, send it to us, and we will take care of all the questions at the end. You don't need to wait until the end to send your questions. You can send your questions during the whole presentations, and we will address all of them at the end. And now, without further ado, I would like to thank the U.S. Small Business Administration to join us today, and also Sandro Murtas, who is the representative from the Small Business Administration that will be with us today. For those of you that doesn't know the SBA, it was created in 1953 as an independent agency of the federal government to aid, counsel, assist, and protect the interests of small business concerns, preserve free competitive enterprise, and maintain and strengthen the overall economy of the United States. And Sandro Murtas is the lead export finance manager at the U.S. Small Business Administration in Miami, covering Florida, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. He has previously held management positions at the U.S. EAC offices in New Orleans, Atlanta, Tampa, and was a global trade specialist at Synovus Bank. He has extensive experience in international trade, having chaired the export committee of the Puerto Rico Manufacturers Association and advised the Latin America Association of IT Clusters. Mr. Murtas is a certified global business professional and has spoken at conferences and seminars in the United States, Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, Bahamas, DR, and Italy. He holds an undergraduate degree in MA and Business Economics from Wichita State University. So Sandro, welcome, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Juan Carlos, and again, thank you for the invitation, for the opportunity to share some information that I know it will be useful for many of the members of the chamber and members of the audience that are not yet members of the chamber. We hope that this will motivate them to be part of trade organizations that are so important nowadays. And, as we know, strength stays in the many, so in the group, and
Yes.
this is information that they might not need right now, but it's good to have, because I always say, and I always tell both small business owners and also the banks, you never know when you need it. And when the business opportunity comes up, you don't want to waste time trying to find information. You already have it and you can focus on the business opportunity. So hopefully this will help many of the business owners to become more competitive and to grow their business. And I always say, when you grow in your business, you're also doing economic development, because you're going to create new jobs or maintain jobs, pay more taxes. So all of that benefits the community. So without any further ado, I will take my camera off so we can focus on the presentation.
Sure.
And as Juan Carlos said, anytime you have a question, please feel free to ask it, because that it's part of the dynamics that makes the presentations more interesting. So today we will talk about the Small Business Administration and some of the programs that are available to small business owners. Juan Carlos already talked about what the SBA does. Basically, we have a series of services that focus on access to capital. SBA does not provide direct financing unless there is a disaster. So otherwise, our partners, the lenders, will be the providers of the loans, the commercial loans, and we will guarantee the loan for the bank, and we will talk about it in a little bit. We also have federal contracting. That's another very important function that SBA carries out to make sure that the biggest buyer in the world, which is the US government, provides an opportunity to small businesses to become either direct contractors or indirect contractors, meaning that they join forces with larger companies when we talk about larger contracts, so that they have an opportunity to have a share of the pie. We talked about the disaster loans, and we also talked about the counseling. SBA, through ourselves, our employees, and also through other entities that SBA funds, such as the Small Business Development Center, the Women Business Centers, the Veterans Business Opportunity Centers, CORE. They're all organizations that SBA funds, so that small business owners and would-be small business owner, people who are thinking about establishing their own business and they don't know where to start, they can go there, have access to specialized consulting services free of charge. They're paid by the US government, so that they can have access to those services, both the counseling and the training. Within the SBA, we have the Office of International Trade, which has a special focus. We work with the small business exporters or small businesses that want to start exporting. And also we work with the banks that provide financing for those small businesses that are carrying out international business transactions. So, as I mentioned, we have a very large number of services that are offered. I mentioned the government contracting assistance. Remember, as I mentioned, 500 billion marketplace. The US government buys everything from products to services. So if the company, the potential contractor, is a small business, and how do we define a small business? We use the North America Industrial Code, in which industries are defined either by, as a small business, either by the number of employees or the amount of annual sales. So based on that, either number of employees or amount of annual sales, then the company is defined as a small business. Just to give you an example, in general, 500 employees or less for a manufacturer indicates that a business is a small business. Some sectors or some industries within the manufacturing sector can go up to 750 or even 1,500 employees. So there is a large number of manufacturers that qualify as small businesses. Also, a distributor or wholesale company that has 100 employees or less is also considered a small business. A service company, depending on the sector, less than $15 million, it's considered a small business. Construction company, $28 million in sales or more or less is considered also a small business. So a lot of companies have the opportunity to qualify as to participate in federal contracting and also qualify for the SBA loans. So within those, as I mentioned, you can participate directly in a bid for a federal contract, or if there is a large contract and the small business does not have the capacity to satisfy that contract, they can become subcontractors for a larger company. Well, the U.S. government requires that large contracts that are awarded to large companies, part of it must be subcontracted to small businesses. Within that, there are other programs such as, for example, the Small Business Innovation Research Program, in which there are federal grants for small businesses that are innovators. They conduct research, innovation research for products and services that the U.S. government, U.S. agencies might need. You also have special areas where there are benefits, such as the hub zone, to establish a company in those high unemployment areas. The company can receive some benefits in terms of federal contracting for that purpose. In addition, I mentioned some of the entities that SBA funds in terms of resources for small business owners or would be small business owners. As I mentioned, the SBDC, Women Business Centers, SCORE, and also there are a series of certifications that can help small businesses to receive some benefits in terms of federal contracting, which is the certifications that will help small businesses enter into federal contracting, the federal contracting sector. For example, the most well-known is the Section 8A firms, in which for a number of years they will receive some type of favorable treatment in terms of small contracts. And that until they will become experienced federal contractors. Now, SBA is mostly known for the SBA loans. As I mentioned to you, SBA does not provide direct financing unless there is a disaster, and probably here in Florida and other parts located in the southeast, where we are subject to inclement weather, hurricanes and other natural phenomena, we know that SBA provides the disaster loans. And that's the only instance in which SBA will provide a direct loan. Otherwise, what we do is work with the lenders. The way it works, a company goes, a business owner or it would be a small business. You can qualify if you're establishing for some of our programs if you're establishing your own business. The applicant goes to the bank, applies for a loan. The bank has to make the decision, first of all, if they want to provide the loan. And if they do, they have to determine if the bank feels comfortable assuming all the risk. If the bank wants to do the loan, but there are still some weaknesses that the bank cannot overcome by itself, it has the option, if the applicant is a small business, to ask for an SBA guarantee. They will come to SBA and they will say, look, we want to make this loan to this company, but we need your guarantee. And SBA will provide a guarantee that goes from 50 up to 90%, depending on the program, the use of funds. And that's how you can receive an SBA loan. So as I mentioned, you don't apply for an SBA loan. You apply for a loan, and the bank is the one that will require, if needed, the guarantee from SBA. Let's look at some of the qualifications and requirements for all the SBA loan programs. First of all owners that have 20% or more of ownership in the business must provide personal guarantees. This is a touchy subject. Some applicants, they say, well, I don't want to use my house, to guarantee the loan with my house, or, but we have to remember that we are asking the bank to believe in our business, and we need to demonstrate that we also believe in our business. So that's why we require the owners with 20% or more to provide the personal guarantee. Also, there must be reasonable assurance of repayment. Banks are not investors. Many times we hear business owners or would-be business owners looking basically for investors. Banks lend based on cash flow. So they want to know who you are, what you want to do, how you want to do it, and how much you're going to generate in order to repay the loan and be a sustainable company, not just for 1 year, throughout the years. And that's done with the projections, right? And so banks want to see that the business is healthy enough to generate sufficient cash flow to repay the loan. Also, they want to see that the borrower has some skin in the game, as they say. They have invested in the business, they have the equity, and also they want to see that the business is a for-profit. And of course, to receive the guarantee from SBA, the business must be a small business. It must be the applicant and the business must be located and operated primarily in the United States, and proceeds must benefit domestic operations. There are some cases which a company might have, let's say, a warehouse in Mexico, in the Dominican Republic. They need to buy a piece of equipment for that warehouse. They cannot use an SBA loan for that purpose. The bank, if it is willing, they can lend money for a conventional loan to buy that. But usually they don't do it because banks want to make sure that they have access to the collateral that is used in the loan. So also, since 3 years ago, before we didn't have this requirement, the majority owners of a business, 51% or more, must be either US citizens or permanent legal residents. It's a requirement to qualify for a small business loan. There are situations in which you have investors on an E2 visa, you have business owners that have a status of political refugee. That does not qualify. You're legally in the United States, but you need to have a green card, legal permanent residence, to qualify for the SBA loan. And of course, as we say, emphasize to qualify for the loan, for a guaranteed loan by SBA or any other federal agency, you must not be delinquent on any existing debt obligations to the US government. So if the applicant had a student loan that didn't repay, or they had a disaster loan that wasn't repaid, all of that will show up and will bar access to a government guaranteed loan until that debt has been repaid. So make sure that you are compliant with all the government guaranteed programs you have had access in the past. So let's see some of the challenges of getting a business loan in general. First of all, we need to have assurance of repayment. So the bank will look at the business, and the business must be healthy enough to generate sufficient cash flow to repay the loan. Sometimes you have companies that say, well, I'm going to develop a new product. Okay, that's a long shot. That's more as an investment. You might need venture capital. The bank will lend you money to sell that product based on a market evaluation, an existing product that you will have projections for its sales, so that there is reasonable assurance of repayment. Okay, so the bank will look at character. That's very important, and that's reflected mostly on the credit history. Now, I want to say that things happen in life, and sometimes we fall on hard times. For example, a catastrophic sickness, losing the job, and that impacts the credit history. But the bank wants, that will not bar from accessing a loan. The banker wants to see that you were able to get back on your feet, you took care of all your debt, because anybody is subject to life events that are outside our control. But the most important thing is to demonstrate that we are responsible with our debt. Capacity, so ability to repay the loan. You have reasonable expenses and you're generating enough cash flow to repay the loan. Capital, how much you have invested in the business or you're going to invest. Collateral, secondary source of repayment. Of course, the first source of repayment is the cash flow, but the bank wants to also see that if things go wrong, where they can recoup the money from. Also, they will look at the conditions in the sense that there are things that are outside the control of the business. For example, the situation of the economy, or a hurricane comes in. All of those things are outside the control of the business owner, but it will be taken into account in the case of when they're evaluating a loan. For example, if the economy is not too strong, an SBA guarantee might make sense to mitigate risk for the bank and the business owner. So how does the SBA loan help? Well, for example, in the case of the character, it will expand acceptable range of credit scores. In terms of capacity, it will lower the debt servicing ratio. For example, just to give you an idea, on commercial real estate, usually the bank might go 15, maybe 20, stretching it very hard. But with SBA, that loan can be repaid in 25 years. So that makes the debt service ratio more, the debt service in general, more bearable. You can still repay the loan before those 25 years, but in the meanwhile, you don't have that pressure of a high payment every month. Also, in terms of the capital, lower debt to equity ratio may be possible. Collateral, it might be insufficient, but with the SBA guarantee, collateralizing the loan to the maximum extent possible, you can still get the loan. And of course, as I mentioned, in terms of conditions, the bank is reducing its exposure. If they have a 90% guarantee loan guarantee from SBA, they're reducing the risk to 10%. So if we don't have questions until now, I will go on to the details of the different programs.
Yes, Sandro, go ahead, and we will focus on all the questions at the end of the presentation.
Okay. So let's look at some of the programs. As I mentioned, these are SBA loans, but actually it's a guarantee to the lender. Okay, it's the bank that receives that guarantee. So in order to make the loan to the small business owner. So the first program we have is the SBA program, Express program, that will go up to $500,000 with a 50% guarantee. We also have the SBA 7A loan that will provide a maximum loan amount of $5 million with a 75% guarantee for the lender. And we also have the CAP line. These are lines of credit, fully monitored, that can be used to provide working capital up to $5 million with a 75% guarantee for the small business owner. And this information is important. Sometimes you go to a bank, some bankers might be more knowledgeable. It's always good that you have that information, that you possess this information, because sometimes you might even educate the commercial lender if they don't do too many SBA loans. So with the SBA Express, as I mentioned, it can go up to $500,000. It can be issued as a line of credit or as a term loan. When you issue it as a term loan, you can use it, for example, to purchase real estate or make improvements to the commercial real estate, purchase equipment, refinance debt, access permanent working capital. Permanent working capital means that you receive an amount of money that you will use, for example, to buy inventory or to pay the expenses during a period of time, and you repay it during 10 years. And also you can finance business acquisitions. You're going to buy a new business, or you might acquire a competitor. The bank can provide you with the financing using the SBA guarantee. The terms, as I mentioned, commercial real estate can go up to 25 years. And while for equipment, permanent working capital, debt refinance, or business acquisition, it can go up to 10 years. So very convenient terms in terms of the period of time you have to repay the loan. And again, you can repay at any time, but it will make the debt servicing much easier. So some of the benefits: it's a very flexible. This uses all the forms and policies for similarly sized loans for the bank. It's very fast. Again, the bank uses its own policies. It uses its own forms. So it's a very streamlined process. In addition, loans up to $500,000, they don't have to pay an SBA guarantee. In addition, there are some cons. For example, well, for the bank, it's just a 50% guarantee, so it still shows some risk for the bank. It can go only up to $500,000, and you have a period of time the bank will term out the line of credit. It will give you, for example, 5 years plus 2 years to repay the line. The 7A, same use of funds as the Express, but the loan will go up to $5 million, okay? And it will provide a guarantee of 75% for loans above $150,000. Very important. You have to understand that depending on the program, you can have multiple SBA loans. For example, you can get a loan to purchase the commercial real estate. Then later on, you need another loan to buy a piece of equipment. And then you might need also a line of credit under the Express program. So the total amount is $5 million, and the maximum SBA guarantee, if you're using the 75% guarantee, is going to be $3,750,000 in maximum guarantees from SBA. If you use the 90% guarantee because you're a company that is exporting, then the maximum SBA guarantee is $4.5 million, always with a $5 million total loan amount. Okay, so you can have multiple loans of different amounts until you cap the allowed amount under the program. Okay, so the benefit, again, we talked about the terms for the loan, 25 years for real estate, 10 years for all equipment or debt refinancing, permanent working capital, or business acquisition. Of course, this will provide, and then remember, the bank might like the business, they like the business owner, but the economy is not doing well, or there are some weaknesses still. It's a fundamentally good business, but there are weaknesses. The SBA guarantee will give the comfort to the bank to make that loan that otherwise wouldn't make. Okay, the SBA loan, again, it's not there to obtain more convenient terms. The bank needs to be willing to make the loan, and then they will evaluate the amount of risk they want to take or how comfortable they feel with the risk. If they can do it conventionally, they will do it conventionally without an SBA guarantee. Otherwise, they will use an SBA guarantee. But again, they like the business, they feel comfortable with the business owner. And so the SBA guarantee is there to make a good business with some weaknesses more attractive for the bank. Okay, if the business is not generating enough cash flow, cannot cover the debt responsibility, then the bank would not make the loan, no matter if they have an SBA guarantee or not. Okay. Again, some of the cons. Well, it's the larger the amount, they have to carry out deeper analysis and documentation. Sometimes people complain this because they say, well, an SBA loan requires a lot of documentation. Yes, it does, but that's what allows you to access financing. And of course, now if the loan is above $500,000, you have to pay SBA fees. Finally, we have the working capital cap line. It goes also up to $5 million with a 75% guarantee, but these are lines of credit, and they have different type: working capital, seasonal lines of credit, contract line of credit, depending on the use of funds. As I mentioned to you, it goes up to $5 million. Some of the restrictions, well, restriction and complexities, or of course, more complex application. Remember, we go up to $5 million, so the amount of credit analysis is higher. You can issue standby letters of credit. Startups are ineligible, while they could qualify under the Express and the 7A. Also, it's a line of credit, and it requires a monthly borrowing-based certificate. And for any amount above $1 million, the company must carry out field exams, which they're paid by the applicant and the borrower. There are also other programs that are designed for economic development, and especially for underserved markets, such as the microloan, which will go up to $50,000. You also have the community advantage loan that will go up to $350,000, and that is going to be raised up to $500,000 now with a new SOP. These are programs that are designed for companies that are not bankable yet. They're existing businesses, but they're not ready to receive a bank loan. So these are programs that are focused on, as I mentioned to you, underserved markets that have difficulties accessing commercial loans through regular bank lenders. So these organizations receive the funding from SBA, and they will make direct loans to those members' businesses in the community. The 504 program is a great program. It's a combination of a loan by a debenture issued by the CDC, Certified Development Company, authorized by SBA, will issue that bond. Then 50% is the bank commercial loan, and the rest is the down payment that the small businesses puts down for the project. It is used for equipment and real estate. Okay, so it's a great program for small businesses, especially with those for those large projects. Again, up to $5 million. Remember, it's in the case of the 504. There is no access to working capital. Let's say that you're going to build a new facility, you have the land, now you get the 504 to build that. And if you're gonna need the line of credit, you won't have it under the 504 program. You might ask for a 7A loan, and then you apply for a 504 program, and that allows the bank for one time to go over the $5 million limit. The next programs I want to talk about is the programs that are designed, are part of the programs that are part of the export guarantee programs. Florida is one of the most important export centers or export locations for the United States. There is an incredible amount of exports to the Caribbean, Central America, South America. There is also a lot of imports from different parts of the world that are brought into the US. These products, and many times are re-exported to countries in the region. So let's look at some of these programs. We have the Export Express program, we have the International Trade Loan, and the Export Working Capital program. These programs are similar to the ones that we described previously, but they are designed with higher guarantees to mitigate even more risk for the lenders that are lending money to the exporters. How does SBA define export? First of all, I want to make sure that we understand that SBA does not have a restriction in terms of the origin of the products. A company might import a product into the US. Let's say that I'm importing olive oil from Spain. I'm bringing it to the US. Part I sell it in Florida, and part I'm exporting it to the Caribbean. I can use an SBA line of credit to finance those sales. For the Export Working Capital program, we also have the concept of the foreign to foreign export, meaning that I'm buying the oil from Spain, I'm selling it to Mexico, I'm generating an account receivable that I can finance under the Export Working Capital program line of credit. Okay, so we will go into the detail of those situations so that you have clear understanding on how they work. But the most important thing that I want you to remember is that you don't have to, in order to qualify for an SBA export loan, you don't have to have the product made in the US. In most of the cases, it's imported and re-exported from the United States. I also want to remind you that exists the indirect export concept, which means, and this happens a lot in South Florida, in which let's say I'm a distributor I, again, sell olive oil from Spain, and I don't export. But I have some of my buyers, they buy the product from me, and then they don't sell it in the US, but they re-export the product. That qualifies me as an indirect exporter, and I can qualify for the SBA export loans. What I need is some type of documentation from my buyer telling or certifying that part or 100% of what they buy from me is being re-exported to another country. So let's go to the details of the programs. The Export Express, just like the regular Express, it can be issued as a line of credit or as a term loan, same use of funds. Real estate, equipment purchase, debt refinance, permanent working capital, business acquisition, and standby letters of credit. The loan has a guarantee of 90%, up to $350,000, and 75% between that amount and $500,000. It can be issued as a line of credit. I can still use the requirement that SBA has for the line is that 70% be used for export purposes, including financing export sales, but also I can use that line to finance my participation in an international trade show, to a trade mission, any expense that will allow me to grow my export sales. And I can still use 30% of that money to finance the domestic needs for my company. And I can also use the Export Express to issue standby letters of credit in which I receive a down payment from my foreign buyer. My foreign buyer has sent me, let's say, $100,000 a down payment. They say, well, I will send you the down payment, but I want to guarantee that if you don't come, you don't perform, I will get my money back. So the bank has the option to allow the small business exporter to issue a standby letter of credit for $100,000 using just a 25% cash collateral of $25,000. What the bank will do will freeze the remaining $75,000 on the line of credit. So again, just like the regular Express, it's very flexible, quick turnaround. Lender is using its own forms, its own policies for similarly sized loans. The cons, well, again, it goes only up to $500,000. So if you need more than that, this is not the best answer. And of course, we want to see more documentation regarding the export sales. So usually it's a questionnaire, some evidence that you're exporting or you have a business plan or documentation that will show that you will grow your sales. The international trade loan is basically the 7A loan on steroids because the bank, instead of getting 75% guarantee, now it will get 90% guarantee. And again, a company that is exporting or is an indirect exporter or is getting ready to export. They have an export business plan they can provide showing that the loan will help them to increase or start exporting or increase export sales, current export sales, and that it will provide a great benefit for the company. For example, company is going to buy a new piece of equipment, will increase production capacity, now can sell more domestically and internationally. It would allow to enter new markets. Again, longer the benefits of the international trade loan, just like the regular 7A, longer maturities, startups are possible, while they're not under the Export Express, and as a maximum amount of $5 million. Some of the requirements, export business plan is required. You also have to provide projections, 12 months projections, month by month. There are SBA fees for amounts of $500,000. And of course, the higher the amount, since the SBA fee is based on the amount, the higher the amount, the higher the fee. And finally, we have the Export Working Capital Program, which is a line of credit that will go up to $5 million, and will provide the lender with a guarantee of 90% to mitigate risk. The line can be issued as a transaction-based. Let's say that I'm an exporter. I buy my olive oil in Spain. I bring it to Miami, and then I re-export the product from Miami. I need working capital. I get a purchase order. I need money to purchase the product. I get an advance against that PO. I ship the product. I get paid. The line gets paid, and the payment goes into a control account, and the bank will deposit the profit into my operating account. Let's say that I need to finance export inventory and foreign account receivables. I can present a monthly borrowing-based certificate in which I will list how much inventory I have in my warehouse, export inventory, and foreign account receivables I have in my agents. The bank can advance up to 90% against purchase orders and foreign account receivables insured, and 75% against export inventory. As I mentioned to you, in the foreign to foreign, let's say that I'm buying the olive oil in Spain. I'm shipping it directly from Spain to Mexico. I cannot have pre-export financing, meaning I cannot finance foreign purchase orders. But what I can do, once I generate the foreign account receivable, I can borrow against that foreign account receivable that is insured from Mexico. So it expands the possibilities of financing some of the additional transactions for the bank and for the small business exporter. Same thing as in terms of the standby letters of credit. The line can be used to collateralize standby letters of credit, requesting just a 25% cash collateral to the small business exporter. And of course, the bank will take the first lien on all the assets being financed under the line, and it can also ask for additional collateral if needed. These are some of examples. The presentation will be shared with you, and you can see how the SBA guarantee will allow to increase the amount of the advances that the small business can obtain when the bank uses the SBA guarantee. Of course, reasonable assurance of repayment for the EWCP will require that the small business exporter uses either letter of credit or insured foreign account receivable insurance. In some cases, we allow the small business to sell open account when they're selling into economically stable country, and the buyer is stable, or not stable, but solid. Buyer might be the subsidiary of a U.S. corporation, or might be a government in a foreign country that has good ratings, or it might even be a small business, as long as the small business exporter has 24 months or more ledger history with that small business buyer in the foreign country and never had any issues with the payment. Here are some of the interest rates that apply based on the programs and the term of the loans. The fee schedule, as I mentioned, for loans $500,000 or less, zero fees for that loan. And under different programs, you will see, and the different amounts, you will see the guarantee fees that need to be paid. I will leave it to you as a reference. And thank you. This is my presentation. And Juan Carlos, I will leave it to you.
Thank you so much, Sandro. Thank you so much. It's been very helpful. Everything you mentioned, a lot of information, but also a lot of useful tools to develop your businesses. If you would like, you can turn on your camera again.
Yes.
And so now we're going to address some of the questions that the attendee had. And if anyone else would like to send us their questions, you can do that through the tab that says questions in the control panel on your right side of the screen. You click there in that tab, write the questions and send it to us, and we will address all those questions right away. And just a reminder, we will share with all of you the presentation as well as the link to the video, and that will be also uploaded to our YouTube channel, and Sandro's contact information. So you can contact to him directly in case you need some additional information. And we already have some questions, Sandro, that we've been getting during the presentation. The first one that we have, let me put it bigger here, it's how can a foreign-owned LLC build corporate credit score in the USA? If the owners are not residents, the LLC cannot get a credit card. So it is impossible to build a credit score. Is there a way that you know about?
Well, banks will allow you, under providing all the legal information, documentation, and of course, if the company has opened an operation here in the States, they can, open their own bank account, and they can start building that credit. If they're not allowed because they don't have an A2 investor visa, right? But the owner wants to open as an individual a bank account, they can do it, but it will be on the individual size, right? So
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sandra.
but there is sorry, Juan Carlos, but there is Miami has a ton of banks, including many Spanish banks that might not have retail operation here, but they do business here because Miami is a financial center, and you have a lot of investors that come from Latin America that open their account here. They want to have their money here. So
yeah, in my experience, what we know from companies from Spain that they set up here operations is that the corporate credit score gets some time. You need to have a minimum of 3 years doing business in the United States in order for the banks to provide some credit to the corporations. But the first step, as Sandro said, is to get that credit through the person, a personal credit. That will be the beginning, and you will start getting that credit. And with time, after 2 or 3 years, depending on the bank, the banks might be ready to provide those credits to the companies, but it takes some time.
And I've seen, for example, in the past, some extreme measures, meaning that, for example, the company in the foreign country, let's use Spain as an example, they can go to their bank in Spain, open a standby letter of credit that benefits the bank in the US, and the bank in the US can then use that as collateral to issue a line of credit, and that will help also create that. But that's it costs money unless you really need it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
There is an answer to everything.
Yes.
It depends on the
It is. But it's possible. But usually it gets some times or money, but it's possible. Some other questions that we got. Regarding the letter of credit that you mentioned before, how can a company get that letters of credit mentioned during the presentation if they import from Indonesia furniture and they sell it to Mexico. The final client is in Mexico, but they're doing that through the US LLC. Is there a possibility to obtain a letter of credit to
Well,
guarantee the payment from the Mexican client?
yes. You can, okay, you do the importing. In that case, if you're shipping directly to Mexico, for example, yeah, you can have a guarantee from the Mexican buyer, the payment guarantee through the letter of credit. Letter of credit is expensive, so, but it's the safest, method of payment that you can use in international business if you can comply with all the requirements of the letter of credit. Let's say that in this case, specific case, so you need working capital, let's say, because you have a foreign account receivable. The only thing you can, if you're doing foreign to foreign, like Indonesia and Mexico, the only thing you can finance through the Export Working Capital Program would be the foreign account receivable that is generated from the sale to Mexico. So let's say that you're providing credit to your buyer in Mexico. You give them 30 days, you need the money now. You can use the Export Working Capital Program to get an advance against that foreign account receivable. That you can do.
And in order to do that, does the US LLC needs also to comply with the minimum 51% of a US resident?
No. We don't actually. In this case, the furniture from Indonesia would be 100% foreign made. Yeah, but the letter of credit, you would use it to get paid from your foreign buyer. That's what I understand from the Mexican buyer. Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, you can go to the bank and say, I have a letter of credit from my buyer in Mexico that will be paid in 30 days. I need money now. Can I get an advance against that? And the bank is willing to do it. You could do that. If we're talking about standby letters of credit, remember, standby is issued as a guarantee. Let's say that you might have the Mexican client that pays you with, it will give you an advance payment, and they need to guarantee that payment. That could be used, yes. Let's say they give you $100,000 and you need to issue a standby letter of credit. Yeah, you could do.
And can you provide a list of banks in the US that are familiar with this tool in order to talk to them to get those services? Because we get some messages from attendees saying that they tried to talk to several banks and they said that they don't provide those services. So is there a list of banks that you know that provides these services and work with the SBA?
Yeah, I mean, the SBA programs in general, I think most of the banks are on a different level, heavy user of the SBA guarantee. On the export side, I'm talking about the Florida, for example, you have TD Bank, Citi, Amaranth, Banesco, Regions. So all of these are banks that the ones that come to my mind. There are smaller ones, City National Bank, for example, that also work with the export lines credit. And if you need to identify some, just let me know, and I'll be more than glad to put them in touch with those.
And the name of that specific program, with the example from Indonesia, what would it be in order to tell the bank, this is a program that I would like to?
Export Working Capital Program.
Wonderful. Perfect. Thank you so much, Sandro. Another questions. Where can I get assistance for my project?
It could be, if you want, I recommend the Small Business Development Center, SBDC, which is mentioned in the presentation. Every state and territory has an SBDC program. Like for Florida is Florida SBDC.org. So if you have an existing business, it's a good, the SBDC, or you could use also SCORE, especially if you have a business idea you have not developed yet. It could be a good option.
Perfect, wonderful. Thank you so much. Another question that we receive is there a maximum income a company can obtain in order to be considered small business in the United States?
No, it's either by sales or annual sales or number of employees. So if you fall below those thresholds of the maximum number of employees for that industry to be considered a small business, or maximum annual sales, then you're considered a small business.
Can you remind us the maximum annual sales to be considered a small business?
Well, if you are a service company, it's $14.5 million, for example. Construction company is about $28 million. Then, if you're in general, if you're a manufacturer, 500 employees or less, or a distributor, 100 employees or less. You could be a distributor. I'll mention one of the companies I worked with last year. They have over $50 million in sales. They're a distributor. They sell electronic equipment. They export electronic equipment to Latin America. And they have less than 100 employees, and they're selling over $50 million. Okay, let's not get fooled by the numbers, right? Of course, these are industries that have very thin profit margins, right? So they do a lot of volume, but it's low. But those are the sales amounts. I mean,
that's great, wonderful. Thank you so much. Next question. What does the bank look for in an applicant usually?
Good, very good question. Very good question. Well, as I mentioned to you, first of all, there must be reasonable source of repayment through the cash flow. So, like I said, sometimes people say, "Oh, I have this great idea. I want to develop a new technology." Now, that you're looking for an investor. You're looking for venture capital. The bank is there to provide financing to a company that is generating cash flow, and the loan will help them improve that cash flow, grow that cash flow. Very important in the US and everywhere else is the credit history. That's fundamental. You have to be very careful because in this country, credit history is fundamental. Bad credit, you don't get access to financing. And for a business owner, starting in the 700s is a starting point. So, as I mentioned during the presentation, sometimes things happen. If you're able to justify what happened, let's say that, of course, banks want to see companies that are profitable the last 3 years, no losses. But of course, we all went through, many businesses went through the pandemic and they had losses, and that was justifiable. It's not that you can't have losses. If you have losses, you have to be able to justify. Very important. And of course, always tell the bank the truth. I tell, if there are issues, be sincere because they'll find out. So it's better to hear it from you. If there are problems, say, well, look, listen, I have these issues. We're working on improving those issues. And this is the truth. All the cards are on the table. But, just don't, you have to be very straightforward with the lender. But most important, credit and cash flow. That's key.
Okay, perfect, wonderful. Thank you. Another question that we have is regarding the requirements. They ask us, what are the requirements to qualify for an SBA loan, and are they different to qualify for the lines of credit mentioned before, or the same?
No, it's they're all the same programs. You know, again, you have to be a small business. That's one of the. You have to be depending on the program in operation, and again, generate the cash flow. It's the ratio is debt service coverage, how much you need to repay to make that payment. It's 1.15. So as long as it's met, they can qualify for the SBA guarantee. And again, it's not that you apply for an SBA loan. You apply for a loan and the bank then makes the determination if they need an SBA guarantee or not.
You mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that businesses are eligible only if it is at least 51% owned by U.S. citizens and those who have
residents, legal permanent residents.
Yes, exactly. That so, also applies for the example that we mentioned before, that the company that imports from Indonesia to Mexico, and the LLC in the United States must comply with this 51% owned.
Yes, that's a requirement. And sometimes you have two owners, 50% each. One is a Canadian and the other one is a U.S. citizen. Unfortunately, it has to be 51% majority owner, at least. Yes. Perfect. Before, we didn't have this requirement, but of course, you always have to have sufficient collateral, even if the majority owner is not a U.S. citizen, doesn't live in the U.S., but the remaining partners can provide enough guarantees they had to provide enough guarantees for the bank in order to issue that loan. But nowadays it's 51%.
Okay, perfect. And another question, does the line of credit have a domestic content requirement?
We talked about two. One was the cap line that especially the working capital line can be used for domestic purposes, and has also a component of the business can finance foreign account receivables under the cap line, both domestic and international. Then we talked about the export working capital program that is 100% foreign account receivables, okay? And then we talked about the Export Express. The difference between Capline and Export Working Capital and the Export Express is that the Export Express is not fully monitored. So the Export Working Capital Program and the Caplines are, meaning that if you want to access the line, you have to present the documentation to the bank. While the Export Express, the bank can give you free access to the line. You need money, you go and with your ATM and you pull it out, or you go to the bank and make a withdrawal without any limitations. For the Export Working Capital Program and the cap line, you have to present the documentation, purchase order, or a borrowing-based certificate in order to access that money. The bank will review it and say, yes, that qualifies. Here is the money. Here is the advance.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Sandro. Another question from Juan Pablo. He asked, how do you evaluate the possibility of outsourcing the services of a third company to assist with the SBA programs, especially when the bank is understaffed?
Well, there are LSP, lender service providers. That's for the banks, okay? It's I imagine Juan Pablo is a banker, right? So there are companies that what they will do, they will act as the back office of the bank for the SBA division. Basically, the bank receives the application, they will pass the package to the LSP, and there are various around the country. And they will, and the LSP will be the back office for SBA for the bank. So any bank, they can use the SBA programs, because the LSP, the lender service provider, will be the backbone of the SBA division for the bank.
Wonderful, very, very interesting. Okay, it's 10 past 12 and we have no further questions. Thank you so much, Sandro, for being with us today and present us these wonderful tools from the SBA. And as I said, we will share your contact information, we will share your presentation, and as well as the video. But it's been a pleasure. I hope to meet again and continue this conversation in future workshops with you.
Thank you for the opportunity to present to your membership, and anytime they can direct to me or through the chamber. We'll get in touch, and hopefully we can send them to or provide the right information, or to direct them to the right source of information that can help them. There are many, it's very important, there are many resources both from the US government, the SBA, Department of, especially for companies that are interested in exporting, Department of Commerce. Then you have Enterprise Florida, that's the state agency. There is Florida Export Finance Corporation. It's another organization that can provide export financing for companies that don't qualify yet for a bank loan. So there are many resources that business owners are not aware of that are out there that can use.
It's true. There are many different tools. So the more that we know about them and the more that we spread the word, the better. So thank you, everyone. Thank you all the attendees for joining us today. We hope that you enjoy this webinar and that you will join us in the next one. Don't forget to check all our webinars and events at our website, which is www.spainuschamber.com. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Goodbye.